Okay, we've started. Okay, thank you to those people that are able to come today. I just wanted to welcome you today, Brett. Mon Garling.
Wow, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
First thing I want to ask you, and I've seen that elsewhere, is your middle name, Mon. And I don't know whether to call you Brett or Mon.
No. Call me Mon. Mon.
Mon, okay. What's the origin of that? I thought it sounds very French.
Oh, hardly. I grew up in Lightning Ridge, which is an opal mining town.
Yeah.
And even at a very young age, 3 and 4 and 5, I was collecting dead animals. Walking around and putting skeletons into hessian bags and dragging them home and putting them back together on the well, we didn't have lawn, but in the backyard. But I guess that was my first fascination with anatomy. But I got known as the little monster. So the little monster got shortened to Mon.
Okay, well, I'll call you Mon. I've always said Brett, but Mon's fine if you don't mind. So that sounds good.
No, please do. Please do.
All right. So I was just wondering, I mean, you've been making such incredibly incredible life-size sculptures for some time. Tell me where it all started.
Well, it goes back to those days at Lightning Ridge and collecting bones. It was a fascination with anatomy back then.
Wow.
Even then, my mother was a painter, and would go out in the opal fields to paint. And this is the days before I started school. I'd go out with a butter knife, and there was a beautiful soft sandstone out there, and I'd carve animals out of the sandstone while Mum painted. And that's pretty much where it started.
How old were you then doing that? That's amazing.
Sorry?
You must have been quite young then doing that. That's incredible.
Oh, yeah, it was before I started school.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So I think, though, you've been to art school, have you? Did you study art?
No.
You haven't. No. You haven't formally been to any institution. No. Unbelievable, Mon. That's just incredible.
No, I'm completely uninstitutionalized.
Your sculptures, I mean, both your paintings and your sculptures are pretty sensational, but you must have heard that so many times. Your life-size sculptures, they're so real, but it's more than just being like a plastic maquette. You just capture the whole essence, the whole spirit. It's just beautiful. So we were talking before some of the sculptures that you've done. What was the first that, launched you into equine sculptures? Oh, I can't hear you, Mon. I've lost you. Can you hear me? No.
Is that better?
That's better. Somehow you muted. Yeah, I don't know how.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
No, so back again.
Okay, back again. So what was the first
Big bronze piece?
Big bronze piece. Big bronze piece is the way to... Yep.
Yeah. Well, the first big bronze piece was the Man from Snowy River for a choreo. That was probably 10, 15 years ago, maybe now.
Yes.
Yeah. And after that, that was the first big piece that I'd done. And after that, it was just, it seemed to continue on from there. But from there, as far as horse pieces goes, I did a light horse piece for Muswellbrook and a light horse piece for Wagga, Sandy for Tallangatta, a tribute to the pit horses that worked in the coal mines for Kurri Kurri.
Yeah.
Of course, the Man from Snowy River, and now the Brumbies. So I'm fortunate to have had some big opportunities come my way.
The Man from Snowy River is a pretty sensational piece. Amazing.
Well, oh, thank you. Well, the piece I'm doing now for Forbes, the Brumbies, that was conceived at the same time.
Okay.
So that was conceived at the same time with the idea of maybe putting those Brumbies further down the street. So I don't know if you know Corryong at all, but putting the sculpture at the top of the street in the roundabout and the Brumbies running down the street. but
Ah,
it didn't happen that way.
what's the name of the
It doesn't.
street where you're actually placing the Brumbies now, or where they're going?
The Brumbies are going. The Brumbies are going out on the Condobolin Forbes Road. So there's a string of sculptures throughout Forbes forming a sculpture trail. It'll be open later this year, but there's all sorts of sculptures going out there. But at the moment, I've got about 30 sculptures in Forbes, they've been a great asset to me. Really helped my career along tremendously. They're a wonderful bunch of people. They've acquired some funding over the years, and developed a wonderful trail, building a new gallery and all the rest of it.
And what
So it's a real
about
go-ahead little town.
Ned Kelly? That's a work in progress as well, isn't
Yeah,
it?
Ned's another. Well, Ned Kelly's a story in itself.
Yeah.
It's really it's the story of John Monash as much as Ned Kelly. John Monash led the Australian forces during the First World War, but the story is that John Monash lived next door to the pub with his family, and had stables at the back of his house. And young John Monash, as a 10-year-old, was a stable hand, a stable boy who looked after Ned Kelly's horses when he was in town. So the story of that is that young John Monash and Ned Kelly got along famously. Ned really took a shine to young John and would pay him double the amount, a usual going rate anyway, for stabling a horse. And Ned, on his way out of town, would do some trick riding for him, just because he liked the boy. Now, later on in Palestine, in the Middle East, in the First World War, Monash actually wrote, apparently, in his journals what a shame it was that Ned met his end as he did, because he would have made an exemplary light horseman. He was great with horses. He could live by his wits and shoot and ride and do everything else that, your iconic Australian bushman could do. So it's one of those. It's not your Ned Kelly story with armour plated, helmet and breastplate shooting things up. It's more of a quiet moment between Ned and young John Monash.
Wow. Oh, that's what the sculpture is. I've seen the clay piece that you're making, and I wondered about that. I hadn't actually seen. Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, well, that'll be another
Well, it tells another story to the whole Kelly story. Yeah.
It's certainly not something that we hear about, is it?
No. And I mean, all we know of Ned is that he was a criminal and he shot things up and all the rest of it. But there was certainly a softer side to Ned, more of a human side to Ned. But it's a funny thing, when I was sculpting, you have to do a lot of research. Doesn't matter what sculpture I do. And of course, I haven't got Ned Kelly to sit for me, because I prefer to work from life, as I do paint, but a bit difficult with Ned and John.
Yeah.
But so I had to rely on what photographs there were available. But if you know horses, you look for when you're looking for a horse to buy or ride or whatever you want to do with a horse, a kind eye is important. So if a horse has got a kind eye, they usually got a kind nature.
Yeah.
And all I could say about Ned, looking at old photos, was he had a kind eye. There wasn't any malice in him. I got the feeling through the whole process that he was almost forced into what happened. But that's neither here nor there.
Do you think so, because of his situation or family situation?
So, yeah. I think it just compounded. I think there was probably wrongdoings on both sides, but to be hounded like he was, and for no doubt he was a larrikin, no doubt, but Australia was made on larrikins.
Yeah. I guess it depends too, the position that people find themselves in their socioeconomic background. I'm sure he wasn't very wealthy, and the things they have to do to even survive sometimes can change people.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's interesting what you said about a kind eye and a horse. That's so true. But I think we can say the same thing for people too sometimes.
Absolutely.
To be honest.
Absolutely. You can pick a person virtually on first meeting, just by the demeanor, the kind eye.
Yeah. So the Forbes Brumbies, how many will be in that installation?
There'll be 4 in total. So it's 4 Brumby piece. I'm working on the 3rd one at the moment. Hopefully in the next fortnight, 3 weeks, I'll have them all together.
Wow.
So that's the plan. Yeah.
So it's a long process, the way you are creating
Oh,
For a
yeah.
start, because they're life size. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but what is, I mean, I'm a little bit aware of the process.
yeah.
I've made, I made a turtle once, like a 6-inch turtle in bronze,
Right.
cast of bronze.
Yeah,
Yeah. Did
yeah,
lost wax casting. But
yeah.
what's the process? Tell us what the process is you have to go through.
Well, the process always starts with an idea, and that idea can come from a million different influences. But you know, in this case, I always start with a little what I call a thumbnail. So a thumbnail is just I get a little bit of plasticine and I sculpt the idea as a tiny little piece. And the idea with that is I can keep moving it around and changing the dynamics of it till I get something that I like. And once I've got something that I like and works as a sculpture, I'll increase it in size to about a 1/10 scale. So something maybe, well, in this case, probably about 40 centimetres by 20 centimetres in height.
And
And
would
then
that
once
be
I've done that,
would that be in plasticine, or would you move then?
yeah, still in plasticine, still in plasticine. But even that has a wire frame or wire armature running through it to support it all. And later on, I'll cast that in bronze too, and that'll become a small limited edition piece. But from there, I can then use that to scale up to whatever size I want. So if I know it works in that scale as a dynamic moving piece that breathes a bit of life, then I can scale up from that to a life size or larger or whatever scale I need it to be. So that's where it works from there. But to scale up to a life size piece, again, there's a whole lot of welding needs to be done. You need to weld up a frame to start with. So a skeleton, this is where having a fascination for anatomy kicks in, because if your skeleton doesn't mimic the skeleton of the animal that you're sculpting, in this case horses, if you don't know your skeleton, you don't know your internal functionings of the animal, you're not going to get it right. So the idea is to weld up a skeleton to start with in steel, then I coat that in chicken wire, and that gives something for the clay to tooth into, and I sculpt over the top of the clay, over the top of the frame. So then I've, in essence, got a clay sculpture being supported internally with the steel structure.
Steel and wire. So it must be very heavy.
It gets very heavy. Yeah, yeah. The sculpture itself is probably only 1 inch to 2 inches thick in clay.
Yeah.
I leave the internals hollow. Otherwise, it would be, as you say, too heavy. You know, it wouldn't support itself. And you're using a lot of material. But from that stage, once I've got the sculpture in clay, then it goes through a moulding and casting process. So then the first moulds are rubber moulds, rubber and fiberglass moulds. They come away from the original sculpture. The original sculpture is destroyed in that process. Then I get a whole series of moulds. So a horse might have 20 different moulds made. So there'll be leg moulds will be separate, the head, neck, torso.
So it's 20
tail.
separate pieces.
It's a whole lot of separate moulds. Yeah.
Wow.
Then those moulds then get cleaned, because there's usually a bit of clay residue still in them. So they get cleaned and washed. And once I've done that, I pour wax into those moulds and I get a wax duplicate. So I get a wax duplicate of each section.
Do use wax? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And those wax duplicates then get a high refractory ceramic mould built around them. Then we melt the wax out of that ceramic mould, and then we're left with a hard ceramic mould that we can heat up and pour bronze into. So the bronze takes the place of the wax, known as the lost wax method because of that. We melt the wax out, we pour the bronze in. And then the bronze takes the place, the void left behind from the wax, and we end up with a bronze section. So that horse now is 30 pieces, but in bronze sections about 30 kilos each.
That's one of the photos I've seen of you in your studio with all these pieces everywhere, with all the little pieces poking up. Oh, okay. So what happens then?
Yeah, so it's a matter of welding it all together. And a lot of work in cleaning off welds, an awful amount of work in cleaning off welds and putting back surface details over welds so that it looks like it's one casting. But in essence, the bronze itself is only cast at 5 mil thick. The reason for that is the average horse weighed between 800 kilos to a tonne. Now, and that's at 5 mil thick. To cast it as a solid piece, we could be looking at 5 tonne, which is a lot of bronze.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
But,
oh, wow.
Yeah,
So
and also
really
there's problems with casting something solid like that. Big body stays hot a lot longer than a fine body. So if you've got a thin leg, it's going to solidify a lot quicker than, say, a barrel or torso. and what you get is shrinkage problems and cracking problems. But
In the bronze?
To eliminate all that, very much so.
Really?
If we cast it all 5 mil thick, there's no casting issues, there's no shrinking issues, anything like that. But in a job like this, there's a lot of stainless rod that runs internally through it. So it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. So there's a lot of support structure internally holding it together and upright. So it becomes an engineering thing as well.
Wow. So once it's all once you've got the bronze pieces and then you weld them together, do you? Or how does it work?
Yeah.
And then
I weld them with a TIG welder. Yeah.
And then what about cleaning the bronze? That must happen too. You'd have to clean it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of cleaning up. I mean, once you've got a weld, you don't want a dirty great weld running across the middle of a sculpture.
No.
So there's a lot of work in cleaning off the weld and putting back surface detail so that you can't tell that there was a weld there. So that's
really
a very
incredibly. So making the piece such as, say, Sandy the Warhorse, how long would you estimate that took you to actually making all the... Sorry?
Generally speaking, a horse is about a year's worth of work.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, normally a foundry would take care of the casting side of things. Normally, a normal situation, a sculptor just sculpts the piece, takes it to the foundry, and the foundry will take it over from there.
Yeah.
But where I am, and because I'm a little bit OCD with things, I like to do it all myself.
So you're doing everything. So that's why it takes so.
Yeah.
But that way you're in control of everything, aren't you? To make sure it's really
you are.
How you want it to be. Yeah.
That's right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
it's just more time consuming. I usually work about 85 to 100 hours a week.
Wow.
My average week.
Yeah.
And I can't get staff. There's nobody qualified sort of in the field out here. So it's me.
Wow. So when so the Forbes Brumbies, you mentioned the other day to me, you think they might be unveiled in about November. Is that still?
Look, I can't tell you the exact date, but about November. They're opening up the whole sculpture trail. So it's going to be a national event. They're inviting councillors from all over Australia to the event.
Oh, really?
It's going to be a major tourist attraction. Forbes is doing a great job to promote it all.
Yeah.
I think there stands at about probably 50 or 60 sculptures.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's on the river, quality. Isn't it? It's like a river walk, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it follows the Lachlan River.
Yeah.
The sculpture trail itself starts in Forbes. So there's a lot of sculpture in Forbes around the lakes and whatnot. And I've probably got 30 sculptures there already. And then it goes out to the wetlands, to the bird hides, and follows the Condobolin Road all the way to Condobolin.
That's going to be
There's
incredible.
some quite large and interesting pieces.
Yeah.
So
with your Brumbies, like the Forbes Brumbies, I've noticed that there's one actually bucking and pink rooting, and how do you work that? How do you use photos, or how do you do that? How do you achieve that?
Been around horses all my life.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I have horses, so I mean, I'm a horsey person. So I've got a model standing at my door most days.
I saw that some of your studio shots at the door, and it comes inside too.
Yeah.
That particular.
Yeah. I know they help themselves a bit. Yeah.
So, that's going to be an incredibly exciting event in Forbes. I personally would love to go to that.
No, it'll certainly be an iconic sculpture trail.
Yeah,
and not just with my work involved, but the quality of work that's in the trail is very high caliber.
So what other sorts of sculptures will be on that trail at the unveiling?
Well, for instance, there's a piece at the moment which it's a goanna. It's made of stainless steel rod, but it's about I'd say 20 or 30 feet long, and stands upright, as goannas do when they're alert. It's big and impressive. But there's all sorts. There's some abstract things. There's some semi-abstract things. There's There's in all mediums. There's some things made out of bridge piers. There's stainless steel. There's all sorts of pieces, stone.
So it's a major sculptural event. It sounds so good.
Oh, absolutely.
I wonder if
absolutely. Oh, yeah. Well, look, it would. I guess it would compare to Sculptures by the Sea, but as a permanent exhibition. Yeah, yeah.
So I know that you're a horsey person, as you said, and you're very aware of what's happening in both New South Wales and Victoria, but probably you're in New South Wales, aren't you? Probably more aware. Yeah. What are your thoughts about what's happening to Brumbies? I know you're sort of aware.
Look, I look at it from the point of view that we're all ferals here, you know. None of us are native to the country. My thoughts are that aerial shooting is just an absolute no-no. You know, it's devastating. It's cruel. It's absolutely awful. The thought of losing our Brumbies altogether, well, that's just beyond thought. You know, our Brumbies have formed us. You know, our literature, you know, our movies, our for me, it's my artwork. They touch a deep chord in me. But as they do it for many Australians, you know, the man from Snowy River. Which Australian wouldn't know the man from Snowy River?
Yeah.
You know, or the Silver Brumbie. You know, they just form the basis of who we are. We wouldn't be here without the horse.
No, we wouldn't.
No, we wouldn't. We certainly wouldn't. So do we just discard that as being history and get on with the future without acknowledgement to the past? You know? That can't happen. And I think, in essence, there's a great opportunity there for tourism too, with parks and whatnot. The eradication is not the answer. It's certainly not the answer. Controlling numbers, yes, obviously. But I think there's better ways of doing it than aerial shooting. But I'm in total disagreement with eradication. That's a no-no for me.
Yeah, I think there's many people would agree with you, Mon.
I'm sure. I mean, America takes a better stance where sterilisation of stallions, you know, to help control numbers in places. That would work. You know, you miss a breeding season. Well, you've knocked off a lot of possible foal births just there, haven't you? You can slowly bring the numbers down in a controlled way without having to brutally, you know, slaughter horses, leave them for dead.
Yep, I think there's a lot of issues there around numbers, because even the 2019 220 wildfires were never really taken into account to start.
No.
And also the methodology that has been used is also under criticism. So there's a lot of
too.
Yeah.
And so, I dare say I do doubt whether the numbers that have been bandied around as far as numbers of horses go. I have, being a horse person and knowing what horses are like and the way they breed and all the rest of it, and the habitat they would prefer to be in, I severely doubt that the numbers that they're boasting are actually there.
Well, that's
largely.
That's a big issue between the government and Brumby advocates. Yeah. It's the numbers that are in dispute. Yeah. So I don't know, but I think you're aware also there have been legal proceedings issued in the New South Wales Supreme Court. It was before the court last Thursday. I think it was Thursday. And probably we should hear something by tomorrow. There was an application for an interim injunction pending trial. And hopefully there'll be a decision made, handed down about the interim injunction. And I predict possibly tomorrow or this week, definitely, but maybe tomorrow. And if there's a restraint pending trial, which could be very quick anyway, 2 or 3 weeks, let's keep our fingers crossed. So
yes, definitely.
I wanted to ask you too, for people who are interested in coming and looking at your own work, your artwork, your paintings, and the 30 or 40, I think you said, sculptures you have. And where can they do
Yeah.
that? Where are you? Where's your gallery?
Well, I'm at Mon Garling, which is out near Dubbo,
Okay.
central New South Wales,
Mhm.
central west. But I've got sculptures pretty much all over the eastern seaboard now, public sculptures. I think I've got 50 public works out there at the moment, stretching from Victoria all the way up to Queensland.
Where are you,
So
Victorian? Yeah.
well, I have the Man for Snowy River in Victoria.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
have
Yeah, that's true.
Sandy, and then over the border at Wagga Wagga, I've got a light horse piece there, and at West Wyalong, Dubbo, Forbes, Sydney, Parramatta Stadium, Darling Harbour, heading west out to Narromine, heading north up to Narrabri, Gilgandra, Tirrawina, Muswellbrook in the Hunter Valley. Got a few pieces there. It's just, Lightning Ridge, Dirranbandy, all sorts of places.
It's incredible. It's expanding.
Well, at the moment, I'm working on a book.
Are you?
So a travel guide, a travel guide to where all my public works are.
Oh, what a good idea.
Well, there's been a big call for it. I've been reluctant to do it because it's more time to start with, but it probably sounds a little bit conceited too. But
I think it helps people to find wherever your artworks are. I think it's a great idea. So how can people get that book when it's ready?
I'll advertise. I'll be advertising it through both my website and social media.
Oh, great. So well, if you can share that with me, I'll definitely put that up so people can, because I'd like to know myself. But when I head off and hit the trail, you might see me up there one day with my own painting gear.
Well, you'll be most welcome. Most welcome.
Oh, goody. I'm glad you said that. Well, I don't know. I can't see any questions, and I don't know. We've got a Zoom. I don't know if people can ask questions, but I think we've probably pretty well
we've covered most things.
We've covered most things, and it's been so interesting. It's been really interesting to hear how you first started and that sculpting in sandstone. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Right. No, I've still got a few of those little pieces around somewhere.
It'll be really great to see those Forbes Brumbies, and I'd really like to try to get up there and have a good look.
Most welcome. They've been a 5-year project. They didn't mean to be, but I started them prior to COVID, and then COVID hit. And then, of course, we couldn't get materials and prices went through the roof. So it was just a cost blowout right from the onset. But anyway, they're coming along. They're nearing the end.
Well, I enjoy following them, and I know that other people do. And I really think, personally, you've really captured the essence, the spirit of Brumby.
Oh, thank you.
They're just beautiful. Absolutely stunning.
It gives me great pleasure. It's poignant at the moment, I know, but it gives me great pleasure to be able to do them too, because they're so close to my heart. The very first painting I ever did was the Man from Snowy River as a 5-year-old in kindergarten, and I won a Walgett show with it.
And then
so that's how long they've been a part of my life.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a long while. So it's going to give you a great deal of pleasure when you finally install Ned Kelly too, I should imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I look forward to the next piece. I've got a few pieces that I'd like to do for myself, take a break from the commission work for a little while.
Yeah.
And I've got some large pieces I'd like to pursue just of my own.
Are they
more horse
separate
pieces.
or are they separate, or can we?
At the moment, they're a bit tight-lipped, but
okay. All right. Well,
but very much in the vein of Australiana.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm all about preserving our Australian history.
That's what's needed.
So
we don't want to lose
Australian history of horses.
We really cannot afford to lose our European, Australian history.
We're staring down the barrel now, aren't we?
That's what's under threat.
Literally staring down. Well, the thing is, Marilyn, that gets me is that after the First World War, and it's a great thing now, we have a tribute now to Sandy, who was the only war horse to return. And there was great angst and anxiety about leaving and shooting, all those horses in the Middle East and bringing back one horse. Aren't we doing the same thing now to the Brumbies?
Yeah. There's
a great uproar about that. Yeah. And we're doing virtually the same thing. We're going to eradicate all our horses, our native horses to Australia, if there's such a thing, but they are. And then what? Do we put up a bronze sculpture as tribute to what used to be?
Well, that's right. That's how it's starting to feel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, there are.
It is. And are they just a thing for the history books then?
No, well, that's why a few of us are fighting to make sure we just
Yeah.
keep going. We just keep going.
Yeah.
I think a few of us
And
aren't
as I
going to
say,
give up.
there's a fine line between conservation and preservation.
Yeah,
But I feel like there's got to be a better outcome.
definitely. And I think too,
Yeah.
the whole management plan, the whole legislation in force in New South Wales, we'll talk about, say, is about the object of that legislation is to balance nature or the
That's
environment with
yeah.
Brumbies. That's what the heritage Brumbie legislation is about, and that's not being achieved.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
done.
And,
That's
and,
not
and,
being
and
achieved.
no, it's not. And there's so much opportunity for the Australian Brumby, even as far as tourism goes.
Yep.
You know, all my friends of mine who are bushwalkers go to Kosciuszko to try and photograph them.
Of course.
You know, through the national parks in Victoria to try and photo. There's a draw to the Australian Brumby.
Mm.
You know, as long as it's managed, I think they should remain.
There's no reason. There are plenty of
There's a lot of opportunity.
Good approved rehomers that do a wonderful job. Not that, I mean, my goal would be to see them more wild living, to be perfectly honest, but subject to numbers, there's no reason why we can't, you know, why the approved rehomers can't do what they want to do if there are too many. Too many of anything can sometimes not be good. The other, just very briefly.
I mean, you won't. Yeah.
I just wanted to say.
Well, we only have to look at the human population.
Exactly. Yeah. Too many humans, and look what ends up. Yeah. So the unveiling of Sandy.
But we're not going around aerial shooting.
Sorry.
We're not going around aerial shooting humans, though, are we?
No, we're not. I heard that the unveiling of Sandy was a particularly very moving experience, and it looked absolutely amazing.
Oh, it was
online with the horses riding through and the silence.
It was overwhelming. You know,
I bet.
The numbers of people and the number of horses, 200 odd horsemen there.
Oh,
you know, it was a beautiful tribute, and that in itself says a lot about how people feel about our horses and our history and our past.
That's right.
And what could be our future.
Yeah.
It's a history that we need to hold on to. It's still living history. It's still very much a part of our culture and who we are.
I know.
It can't be lost.
People don't want to lose it, and I think that's a display of that. Anyway, I think we're almost out of time. We can't leave it until. But it's been great to talk to you.
No, absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Marilyn.
And so interesting. So thank you so much. And thank you guys who could make it. And I'll put up a video a bit later. Okay, talk to you another time, Mon.
Wonderful.
Maybe when the Forbes Brumbies are being installed. Okay. All right. Bye. Okay. Bye, everybody, and thank you.
Bye. Bye now.
Mm-hmm.